Nehru announced that Congress felt free to change or modify the cabinet mission plan as it thought best. The fear of a powerful center dominated by the Congress had been the main reason why the Muslim majority provinces had rallied behind Jinnah and the Muslim League. Nehru's statements seemed to suggest that the Congress High Command intended to deploy central authority to restrict their freedom of action in provincial domains. League sympathizers, bewildered already by their leaders' apparent readiness to settle for less than what they had thought they were fighting to achieve, interpreted Nehru's remarks in a more crudely communal terms. It appeared that the Congress was not ready to meet the League or indeed the mission halfway. Just when Jinnah was beginning to turn in the direction that he both wanted and needed to go, his own followers pressed him to stick rigidly to his earlier unbending stance which he had adopted while he was preparing for the time of bargaining in earnest. The pressure on Jinnah to settle for nothing less than parity was overwhelming. He was curtly reminded that it was mandatory for him to ask for Congress League parity in the interim government, and if for any reason it becomes necessary to reconsider Congress League parity, the matter would have to be referred back to the council and its further decision obtained. Before entering the interim government, Jinnah somehow had to persuade a restive League council to let him come into office at lesser terms than parity. At the council meeting, Jinnah accused the British of having played into the hands of the Congress and that Nehru's childish statements had exposed Congress's designs, and the Muslims had no choice but to return to their original demand for Pakistan, which was the only solution to India's problem. To press for an Indian union and to accept the cabinet mission plan was far from folly. In fact, it was statesmanship of the highest order. Speaking to the council, Jinnah said, "We voluntarily delegated 3 subjects to the union to work for 10 years. It was not a mistake. It is the highest statesmanship the Muslim League has achieved. We had the courage. It was not a mistake to sacrifice 3 subjects to the center." This was when the League passed its direct action resolution. Keeping the way open to getting into the interim government, Jinnah saw to it that the direct action resolution was so hedged in qualifications that once again he would be left to decide whether to launch it or not. What turned up leaping out of the Pandora's box he himself unwittingly helped open was in fact the very last thing Jinnah needed: the Calcutta killings of 16th to 20th August 1946. They unleashed pent-up forces of disorder of such magnitude that they brought parts of India close to anarchy. They gave this violent chaos a communal color, and above all, they destroyed the India of Jinnah's dreams. 16th August was the day League had nominated for direct action. 48 hours before, Jinnah had urged Muslims to remain calm and that direct action day should be a day of peaceful reflection and not a day for the purpose of resorting to direct action in any form or shape. But by now, Jinnah had much in common with King Canute. The spirits of Calcutta's underworld were minded to pay as much heed to his commands as the tides of the North Sea. All that is certain is that Jinnah had no idea what was coming. It is not just that the politics of violence, if corporate brutalizing of this sort can be so described, were an anathema to him, alien to his political style and never to become part of it. But the more powerful argument is that Jinnah did not expect and certainly did not want anything like this to happen. Rather, he was looking for some pretext to get his league into the interim government. Ironically and unfairly, the horrors which lie so close to the surface of India have been laid at the door of this man of orderly constitutional advance, blamed upon his Pakistan and upon irreconcilable differences between Muslims and Hindus, which his own career had consistently tried to bridge. The Calcutta killings brought Jinnah's dilemma into the open. A constitutionalist whom fate had swung into the rough and tumble of mass politics, Jinnah's predicament was particularly cruel. He neither had party organization nor resources to direct a movement. The more it looked, the less it controlled. He had neither the party organization nor resources to direct a movement. The more it looked, the less controlled. By autumn of 1946, Jinnah had been pushed into a corner from which there seemed no escape. Just how desperate Jinnah's situation was is revealed by the terms on which the League eventually took its place in the interim government on 26 October 1946. Jinnah came in without parity. He did not have the monopoly of Muslim representatives. He did not get the veto on issues concerning Muslims, and he did not get the portfolios he wanted. He did, however, nominate Jogindranath Mandal, a scheduled caste Hindu, on one of the League's seats. This was Jinnah trying to rub the salt back into Congress's sores, but it was also the first hint of Jinnah's ultimate intentions of extending the League's umbrella of protection to the scheduled castes and other non-Congress elements. The situation in the interim government was fraught between Congress and the Muslim League. Congress was still unwilling to accept the groupings clause of the 16 May plan. All that Wavell could do to avoid a complete breakdown of the 16th May plan was to arrange for Indian leaders to make a flying visit to London for talks. The conference, which lasted 4 days, was attended by Wavell, Nehru, Liaquat and Baldev Singh. His Majesty's government statement about the talks was hortative and not definitive. Even though it reaffirmed the mission's proposals about grouping and expressed the view that the Constituent Assembly would not be allowed to force a constitution upon any unwilling parts of the country, this was not strong enough to bring the League into the Constituent Assembly. A month later, Congress gave its watered-down acceptance of the statement, but fierce opposition inside the Congress from Hindu Mahasabha and the left wing of the Congress suggested that Jinnah was right in not relying upon its bona fides in the matter. Since 1940, Jinnah's strategy had been based on the premise that India's unitary centre was a British creation which would automatically cease to exist when the British left. Any new All India centre would have to be agreed upon by Muslim provinces as well as the princely states. What Jinnah was clamouring for was a way of achieving an equal say for Muslims in any All India arrangements at the centre. By denying that Indian Muslims were a minority and asserting that they were a nation, Jinnah advanced the constitutional lawyers' argument that since India contained at least two nations, a transfer of power necessarily involved the dissolution of British India's unitary structure of central authority, and any reconstitution of that centre would have to take into account the League's demand that Muslim provinces, the territorial expression of this claim to nationhood, should be grouped to constitute a separate state. Once the British and the Congress accepted the essence of the League's demands, then it remained, for Jinnah at least, an open question whether the Muslim state would enter into a confederation with non-Muslim provinces on the basis of parity at the centre, or whether as a sovereign state it could make treaty arrangements with the rest of India about matters of common concern. He also assumed implicitly, if not explicitly, that a Muslim state built around these provinces would continue to be a part of the larger all India whole, in which minority Muslims outside the Muslim territory would be protected by a similar position that non-Muslims had inside it. Jinnah's tactic was to state his maximum demand: the outright acceptance of a sovereign Pakistan built upon undivided provinces of northwestern and northeastern India, and leaving the British and the Congress to produce an alternative formula which gave him the substance of what he was after. The Congress High Command was not convinced that the concessions to Jinnah would enable him to pull Muslim provinces firmly into a unitary India. In Congress's eyes, the mission's proposals had the double defect of giving the Muslim provinces too much autonomy and also giving Jinnah and the League too much weight at the center, which together would undermine its writ over the rest of India. The price of keeping the Muslim provinces inside the union had to be a weak federal center, incapable of controlling any of its provincial arms, not merely the Muslim provinces. But most importantly, such an arrangement would have meant giving the League a share of power at an already weak center. The experience of the interim government had shown the Congress that the power shared with the League was a power flawed and uncertain. In Liaquat Ali Khan's budget with its proposed business profit tax, the Congress left saw attractions. Dubbed the poor man's budget, the Congress right saw it as an evidence of the League's intention to sabotage the economy. Just as Jinnah feared that the Congress would exploit the particularism of his provincial followers in the Muslim provinces unless he got grouping, the Congress High Command for its part feared that sharing power at the center with the League would enable the League to dangle a bait before its own Congress following.